Hello, I'm Jason Angelette.
And I'm Dr. Mario Sacasa. Welcome to Faith in Marriage Today.
We have a great show for you today. It's great to be back. And as the digital age continues to grow and take a prominent place in our lives, this is a lot of blessings that come with that, but also challenges and even some grave dangers. Two particular that I'd like for us to talk about today that we're going to get into. Obviously, the struggles and challenges associated with pornography, online pornography, but at the same time, those who are on social media, those who are using these cell phones, particularly the youth, the teens, the negative impact that it's having in their mental health.
Right. No, two great topics that we're going to be able to talk about, approaching this as dads always, and our concern that we have for our own children, and helping our listeners to be able to understand what the issues are here. So let's talk about pornography just for a minute. Do you have any idea how much money the porn industry makes in America today?
I've heard so many crazy statistics. What's the latest?
The latest, at least what I've seen, is estimates between $12 to $15 billion. $15 billion.
Yeah.
That's more than the NFL makes yearly. I mean, you think about like all the contracts that athletes make, and the owners, how much money they have, and Papa John's and Nike and shoe deals and all sorts of stuff. You add all of that up,
together,
and it's less than what the porn industry makes in a year.
I think that's the thing we got to realize, that this is a grave problem. We can't just kind of stick our heads in the sand on this. Like, there is something that we need to respond with, because the age of exposure keeps getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
The types of pornography that are there are more body punishing and grotesque. It is degrading, and these children are being exposed to this, and is causing harm and shame.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, no, and absolutely. And the problem is that the industry, because it makes so much money, is targeting our young kids. So we're going to talk about that later in the show, have a great conversation.
Yes.
But the other thing we're really going to try to nail down is talking about social media and the dangers that are there.
Which obviously is another, like you're saying, we're coming as dads, and I've got daughters, I've got a son, and I know that this exposure to cell phone use can be something very challenging, and it can cause a lot of conflict and a lot of issues that we need to get into, that we need to talk about how to manage that, how to help them, so that not to say just take it away, but to give them a way to use it properly. But when we come back, Dr. Mario will be speaking with Chris McKenna, founder and CEO of Protect Young Eyes, to talk about not only the problem of pornography, but how we can better safeguard our homes, ourselves, and our families. We'll be right back. The Willwoods community invites married couples to break away from their busy schedules and spend quality time rejuvenating and enriching your relationship on a weekend married couples retreat. Held at the beautiful St. Joseph Abbey in Covington, you and your spouse will spend time growing closer in your marriage through inspiring talks, private couple time, personal alone time, reconciliation, Eucharistic adoration, and the celebration of the Mass. To register for your getaway, go to faithinmarriage.org.
And we are back and on Skype with Chris McKenna, founder and CEO of Protect Young Eyes. Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Mario.
So as we begin the interview, just tell me a little bit about the organization. What is Protect Young Eyes, and why should people know about it?
Sure. So protectyoungeyes.com, we intend to demystify the internet so that parents don't have to work so hard to find the information that's needed in order to help kids or grandparents, whoever you are. If you're a caring adult, we want you to be able to help the young people that you care for learn how to use technology well. We think it's important today to use technology well, and so that's not always easy to do, especially with really busy schedules. And so our website exists to do all of the research so that they don't have to.
Yeah, we seem to have this love-hate relationship with technology. I mean, here we are on Skype. You're in Michigan, we're in New Orleans. We're having this awesome conversation that can only happen because of technology. But we also know that there needs to be certain limits with regards to technology. So it sounds like that's what you guys are trying to do, is to educate people who may not be so tech-savvy to know what it is that they need to know with regards to the limitations with tech. Is that right?
Yeah, you've got it. A phrase that we use often is right kid, right tech, right time. That's true.
Say that one more time.
Every kid, right tech, right time.
Yeah.
In other words, age 13, even though the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act would say that Snapchat has a right to obtain information starting at age 13, that doesn't mean that upon turning 13, every child is ready for social media, right? You, as a caring adult, has to discern based on the way that God has made each and every one of us what they are able to handle, just like anything in life, right? We just have to uniquely, God loves us individually, so we need to individualize the way in which our kids approach technology, because like you said, it can be a good or a bad thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So good parenting, no matter how many kids you have, you want to know where they are in their journey of life and know what they're ready for and what they're not ready for. So when we talk about like the problems with technology, it seems like a lot of people go right to pornography, especially when it comes to teenage boys and girls. That I know for myself, I have 4 kids, and one of my main concerns certainly is to limit the exposure that they have to this just ubiquitous problem online. So just a little bit about what does the problem look like, and what conversations should we be having with our kids with regards to pornography?
Yeah, sure. I also have 4 children, and I think you said something really important there that I want to maybe put back into the light, and that is it's a concern that's usually tied to teenagers. I would challenge each and every one of us to think of pornography as something that is a topic for discussion across maybe all 4 of the age ranges, whether it's preschool, elementary school, middle school, or high school. That there should be age-appropriate conversations happening about this topic at every one of those stages because of its ubiquity, because no matter how well-intentioned you are as a parent, imagine all the digital doorways that exist that we don't control. And so it's always embracing the reality of when instead of living in the ignorance of if. It's not if, it's going to happen. My child is going to see something that I really wish he or she didn't see. And my children are 14, 9, 9, and 7. So I'm kind of right in the thick of elementary, junior high, early high school. They are going to and have seen things that I wish they didn't. But do they know what to do when those exposures happen is the appropriate question.
Yeah, man, right on. When I think about my kids, me and my wife, we talk about this often. I'm a counselor, and I provide these type of trainings and conversations with people all the time. So certainly at home, these conversations are absolutely on the table. We talk to our kids at the various ages about sexual issues, and then specifically with pornography. That my end game with my kids isn't necessarily we want to limit the exposure, but I think it's an impossibility to say that they'll never be able to see porn. That's, I think, just an impossible expectation. My goal as a parent is to help them not become addicted to porn by the time they leave the house. What do you think? Am I off base as a dad?
No, not at all. In fact, a phrase that often gets people's attention, like, what do you mean by that is I want to block the porn, but I want to normalize pornography. And what I mean by that is I want the comfort level. Yes, I want to block as technically and digitally, whether it's with Covenant Eyes or clean browsing or other services to block as much of the porn as possible. Yes, amen, let's do that. Whether you're 14 or 40, there are certain things that we shouldn't see.
Exactly right.
The unfiltered internet isn't really good for any of us.
Anybody, that's right.
Let's filter out as much of the junk as possible, but then let's normalize the conversation, because I do presentations across the country, and I'll have a room full of 200 parents, and I'll say, I want everyone in the room right now to repeat after me, pornography. And inevitably there's this sort of pause and this discomfort around it. I say, listen, this is telling. Do you know why kids are shameful and uncertain and don't know what to do with this word? It's because you are shameful and uncertain and don't know what to do with this word.
Well, I think you just made all my listeners feel uncomfortable with that. I just want to say that. But you're absolutely right. We're the ones who kind of control the narrative. So what are some main talking points when it comes to our kids that we should be having? Let's say, I know we can have different conversations about 4 and 14. Let's just pick one. I think average age now is kind of like 11 from what I'm hearing. So somewhere in the preteen age, what's 1 or 2 things we should be telling our preteens right now with regards to porn?
Well, we should tell them what the word is. They should know the word, right? Don't be afraid of that word. I want them to know if they hear on the bus or other places, other environments, if they hear the word, what to do. Parents will be like, well, I don't want to say it to them, because they believe the lie that by talking about pornography, you make your kids curious about pornography. And I would say the exact opposite happens. If you tell a child the word, tell them what it means, and not just why it's bad, but at the same time explain why God's ideas about sex and marriage and intimacy are so much better, right? Paint for them a hopeful picture as to why porn is such a lie and a distortion of all the beauty that God has intended for that marital relationship, and say, you know what, but if you hear that word, it's just a word. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to put it down and tell someone, talk to me about it. I want my kids to know that Dad will never be upset with anything they would ever come related to technology and come to talk to me about. Because if the door to me is shut, then what happens is the second time it happens, they won't talk to me. And shame is not an adult-only issue. Right? And as soon as they hold secrets, there's no such thing as a digital secret, and the enemy loves to whisper into that secret. You can't tell anybody. See, I told you Dad was going to freak out. Don't talk to him. I just don't want my kids to ever be in that spot. I want it to be a normal thing. Remove the enemy's curiosity power over this word so that my kids can go, hey, Dad, I heard a kid talking about pornography. It made me uncomfortable. I wanted to talk to you about it. Amen. Yes, let's talk about it.
Yeah, the way you're talking about it's awesome. It's almost like two separate conversations that need to be connected, which is one, we need to be able to talk to our kids not just about porn and why that's wrong, but we need to be able to talk about our kids about the beauty of God's plan for marriage, for love, for our sexuality. And that's where we start in the Sick House at Home, is we talk about that at an early age. And so we can set those definitions in place so that when it comes to something like pornography, we have something kind of to ground the conversation in. So knowing that we can set all the filters, all the blocks, everything, we try to normalize the conversation. What do we need to say to maybe like our grandparents or something when our kids go over to sleepover? What type of conversations do we need to be having with them and preparing them for those opportunities, or hanging out with their friends and they see something that they shouldn't be looking at?
Yeah, so, some families like to have some kind of code or some kind of word that signals help. Like if my kid is ever in an uncomfortable situation, they could text me a word and I'll know what that means. How that translates, say, into grandparents, right? Because my kids love spending time with my mom and dad, their grandparents. If I've had a conversation that frames pornography a certain way, like with my 7-year-old, where, my 7-year-old knew what pornography was and what to do when he saw it, right? But if grandma doesn't know that we've had that conversation, and my son, Blake, is at grandma's house, say, watching Netflix, and he sees something he shouldn't, and he goes up to grandma with the iPad and says, Grandma, I've seen something I shouldn't, what do I do? And she freaks out. I'm not saying she would, but if she does, that communicates something to Blake around shame and that I shouldn't say anything about pornography. In other words, she wasn't prepared to know that conversation and know how to respond. And I do this with teachers all the time when we go to schools and we do professional development. I challenge teachers to practice what to do when a child says something to you that they've seen on a computer. If your first response, which is so critical, is one of surprise and disgust and disappointment, guess what? You've played right into the enemy's hand. And he's going to whisper little lies, little distortions into that. And the second time it happens, they're going to hold a little bit back, and they're going to hold on to that secret, and it's so corrosive. So when they're going to other places, whether it's with friends' houses, make sure parents, I know these aren't awesomely comfortable conversations to always have with people, but the risks are too big. It's no longer just, does your home have Showtime, Cinemax, or HBO, which is really the only question my parents needed to ask. We live in an age where you have to ask different questions about unsecured devices, older siblings, are devices allowed in the bedroom? Because if my kid is in those spaces, especially in the summertime, you better believe I want to know it. So,
yeah, wow. Chris, man, thanks so much. Great advice. Really appreciate you being with us. Hope we can have you again on the show sometime soon.
I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, man. God bless you. So good. So we're going to take a quick break where we'll hear a brief reflection from Dr. Tom Neal. Seeds of Faith will be a reoccurring segment on our show, done in collaboration with the Catholic Community Foundation. Today, Dr. Neal addresses the question, does everyone have a vocation? Take a look.
Very simply, the idea of vocation is that every one of us is created by God with a mission and a purpose in life, that He's entrusted us with gifts and talents at a certain time in history, in a certain place, to do His will in a specific way, to make use of what He's entrusted to us in a specific way in the service to the mission of the church and to the world. And that sense of vocation always begins with a relationship. We have this sense of relationship with God, and it's a God who invites us, who calls us by name. It says, I have called you by name, I've created you specifically. No other human being is like you. No other human being has your gifts and talents that's unique in the way that you are, with everything you have, gifts, strengths, weaknesses, the whole thing. I've called you to carry out a mission in life. And the vocation, we might say, ultimately for every human being, the supreme vocation is to be holy, is to become a saint. This is the vocation of all vocations. No matter what your particular way of living it out in life is, that's the bottom line. to become holy. And to become holy, very simply put, simply means to live and love the way that God lives and loves. To live in accordance with God's will, to make Him present in the world through our lives. This is what holiness is. And holiness can be lived out in any state of life, in any circumstance of life, at any age, in any condition. In our own way, we can try to make Him present, and above all else, His love present in the world. So that's the universal vocation, might say, of every single baptized Christian. And then some people, as they grow older, begin to discover, or most people, that they have a unique, specific calling to a way of life we call a state in life, which is, things like priesthood, religious life, marriage. Those are usually the traditional big three. Choices we make that organize our whole life around those commitments to serve. But we could also include, in an extended sense, in this state of life, professions, careers, ways that we live out, right, in the world as doctors and lawyers and mechanics and electricians and actors or whatever it is. Our particular way of making use of our gifts and of making God's love present in the world. And each one of us, as I said, does that in a very personal, unique, specific way that's particular to us. And that relationship we have with God that's always ongoing is always a process of discerning, what is it, Lord, that you ask me to do now?
Welcome back, everybody. As Dr. Tom Neal just gave us a beautiful reflection about holiness and vocation and discerning God's will, one of the areas particularly challenging for us as parents is social media and the dangers of all those types of engagements online. So, Jason, what are some thoughts you have about social media and how to handle that?
Well, I think even kind of just take a step back and look at just the amount of pressure, right, that we know about peer pressure, and we can look back on our own experiences when we were growing up, grade school, high school. But imagine if someone had a cell phone recording the things of your most embarrassing moment in high school or in grade school. Like, I remember this one time playing football, and I made this embarrassing dive. Like, I was trying to tackle the guy. He went right, and I went way left, right? I mean, I was practically tackling the cheerleaders. And I remember just feeling so embarrassed because the guy ended up running a touchdown, and we ended up losing the game by a touchdown. And I remember just feeling so defeated and deflated from that moment because that kept playing in my head over and over again of the mistake that I made. And I can only imagine what would have happened if someone had taken a video of that, posted it onto a social media platform for all my friends who weren't at the game, for all my family who don't live close by, couldn't come to the game, to see, to repeat, to laugh at it, to joke about it, to say all these things, and then to me try to pick myself up after that. It would just have been a whole nother story for me. So I think we should all kind of take a look and say, this is a new era, a new amount of pressure. So we really need to be careful of how we're going to address this.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that. Now, I mean, tackling the cheerleaders may not have been the worst thing in the world either. I'm just going to put that out there.
Right.
But your point's well taken, which
exactly.
is that we have these pressures that are inescapable. And I think that's the word that comes to mind with what you're talking about, is that for us, so often we find social engagements in that at least when we were in teens or in high school and thinking about with parents right now, like if you were having a problem with somebody, you could kind of avoid that person.
Yeah.
You know that you can go to school a little bit later or lunch a little later, you can take a different way home. There was something about your capacity to avoid the difficulty. The problem is in today's day and age that so much of social interaction, almost all of social interaction is happening through these pipelines, these applications on their phones. So when you're going on Snapchat or Instagram, as soon as you even see the app, like you click on it and all the comments are already there waiting for you. And whether they're good comments or bad comments or really harsh comments, they're there. And so as soon as you turn on the phone and you see and you want to go on Snapchat or you want to go on Instagram or Facebook because you want to be able to have conversations with your friends, catch up, but you know that there's something negative that's waiting for you. So it's just inescapable.
You know, it's tapping into the desire to want to stay connected and want to be part of the group. And that's, just again, put yourself back. What were you like at that time during grade school, during high school, wanting to fit in, wanting to know all this stuff? Like I was talking to a friend of ours who has their oldest child is about a little younger than I am. And their youngest child is about the age of my oldest daughter. Wow. Okay, so they have a range of parenting, right? Parenting before the internet and all that was such a run, and then now where we are right now with cell phones and all that. So they said, they were telling me, especially like with the pornography stuff, like we've got Covenant Eyes, we have, the filters and the protection, things like that. But for my daughter, the thing that really stands out the most is this social pressure, this either fear of missing out or maybe just not being included all the time, always. So they said this, they said, growing up, my oldest daughter, and I would say to her, hey, let's say it's Friday night, come sit down and watch a show with mom and dad. Sit down, watch a show with mom and dad, everything was fine. Fast forward to my youngest daughter, this is them saying this, to my youngest daughter, I say, hey, it's Friday night, you want to come sit down and watch a show with mom and dad? They sit down with mom and dad, but then she takes out her phone, and then she sees her friends together, but she's not there.
Yeah.
And she sees it Friday night, and she's reminded of it Saturday morning, Saturday, Sunday. And so we see there's a whole nother pressure and a whole nother stress and a whole nother of isolation that they're feeling, even though this is meant to be something that's trying to connect them.
Yeah, I know, man. It's really just a challenge. Now, I know that there are some differences between boys and girls and teenage boys and teenage girls as to how they experience this. Now, I only have boys, and so you have both, and God bless you, as you navigate that, and certainly the challenges there with boys. But one story that I want to share that my oldest son is a senior at the local Jesuit high school, and he is a bandsman, so he plays an instrument, he marches in parade season. Sometimes I'll go on the bus and be a volunteer and march on the sidelines, which is just an awesome opportunity. But as I'm on the bus, the boys have their phones out, but they're pretty quiet even when they're on the bus, and they're playing games or kind of even just chatting to the person next to them a little bit, but it's usually kind of quiet. Well, there was one time where the bus was full, and so I was standing room only on the Jayette, which is the dance team bus. And so the girls were all on the bus, and I'm standing there, sitting around, just looking around, and not trying to like eavesdrop on anything, but the amount of conversation was just so high. It was so high. It was night and day difference, right? And all the girls were on Instagram, Snapchat. I mean, all the girls were on the social medias, just chatting, all this thing. And I just immediately was like, man, like the pressures, particularly for young women, is just so challenging. And I know that the studies show that if you give teenagers a smartphone, girls almost always will go, the first apps that they'll download will be the social media apps.
That's right.
And boys, almost always the first apps that they'll download will be games. And so again, there's challenges on both ends, but I know there's a particular challenge there for young women. So you who have girls, what do you see? What are your experiences?
Well, the research is showing significant impact, especially with young girls, young teenage girls. And we're seeing this rise in depression, this lowering of self-esteem. We're seeing a lot of negative impacts emotionally that's happening to women. It's interesting. I was giving a presentation on social media and things like that, and I remember coming across a statistic or the study that said that the majority of teenagers don't love their social media app. They don't love it. They'll love their movies, not like they love their movies, they love their music, but they don't love social media. And I was telling this to Elise, and my second oldest daughter was in the room, and I was kind of talking a little loud so she could kind of hear the insights, because I was trying to teach but not, but so anyway, so I'm sitting there and I'm saying this, and then my daughter stopped me and she says, Daddy, I agree with that. She says, it's not about having Snapchat or having Instagram. She said it's about not having it. So there's a pressure of being included, and there's like this undue stress and burden that they feel like they've got to always, post these pictures or be involved in this thing or like get these likes, and then what are people saying? All of that.
Well, the problem is that when you're having a natural conversation like we're having, or that you have with somebody over coffee, there's always room for an accident to occur. There's always a room for something that I didn't plan to actually happen.
Right.
Online, everything is curated. Every picture you take is edited. It's put through a filtering system, and so you only present your best face forward. Now, we all know this, but the reality is that when we're scrolling and when we're teenagers and this is the pipeline, this is it, it's very easy to succumb to some type of thinking that says, I don't measure up.
Well, you can even think about a vacation. You're scrolling through social media when you're not on vacation, and when you're actually on vacation, you're enjoying the moment. But you're taking a lot of pictures and you're posting those pictures, right? So then people who are not on social media, then they're looking at their phones and they're saying, man, when was the last time I got to go on a trip? I haven't been this. So they're comparing themselves, like you're saying, all these edited things, but also all these amazing moments. They're comparing themselves and they're seeing themselves not at that level.
Yeah, so what we want to do here is really just try to encourage our parents and each other, certainly, that we can do this and that there's a way kind of forward. So when we come back, we will give you our thoughts for an action plan. Stay with us.
Woods Community Faith and Marriage Apostolate invites married couples to the 12th Annual Diocesan-Wide Supper and Substance, Saturday, July 27th at 7 p.m. at Mid-City Rockin' Bowl. Tickets are $45 per person and include dinner, drinks, bowling, and a rockin' good time. Come hear inspiring testimony from Jason and Elise Angelette with music by After Party. Strike now and get your tickets while there's still time to spare. Call 504-830-3716 or visit faithandmarriage.org.
You know, the problems out there are big, but not as big as God. God is bigger than all of this. And I think in the heart of it, we need to make sure that, one, we're praying and trusting in our loving God who is with us, who is giving us the grace to be the parents, to be the people that He's calling us to be. I think some simple solutions, we've got about 7 of them that we can work on today that we want to talk about. The first one is just regulating the amount of time, 1 hour a day on social media for the kids, depending upon the age. I think that would be a good move.
Yeah, the other thing is that you can set time restrictions by application. So whether you have an iOS device or an Android device, it's pretty easy. Just go online, look to see how you can set restrictions on time per app.
And the other thing is that accessibility. You know, these devices, you are able to adjust that and tell them, you know, where they can use it and where they can't use it. You're in charge. You're the parent. One of the things that we have a policy at our house, and I learned it from another family who had a lot of children growing up, that the phones do not go into their bedrooms. And in fact, at 8 o'clock, the phones are turned into mom and dad's room, and there's like a little charging station. All the devices are brought to the parent's house, or the parent's bedroom, and that's where they charge. If they need an alarm clock, go out to Walmart and buy an alarm clock. They don't need their phone. It's preventing sleep, it's causing distractions, and it's causing a lot of problems.
Other apps that you should consider looking into are covenanteyes.com, bark.us, or Disney Circle, which actually isn't an app. It's a piece of hardware that you can connect to your Wi-Fi router, which will give you all sorts of accessibility, time restrictions, and all the control features that you need to be able to manage every single internet control device on your Wi-Fi system.
And obviously we had Chris McKenna on with Protect Young Eyes. Definitely want to recommend everybody to go to protectyoungeyes.com. Great website, loaded with a lot of information. Knowledge is power, and we need to learn what's going on, what's out there, and how we can adjust and how we can grow in our understanding and how to talk to our children and how to better protect our children.
So for those of you in the New Orleans area, a couple of things that we would love to recommend is that Jason and I are actually doing a presentation on this at Notre Dame Seminary on July 10th at 6:30 p.m. So please come and listen to us talk about parenting in the digital age.
Also, lastly, we'd like to talk about the website, the anti-porn initiative called cleanhearts.online/NOLA.
That's our show for today. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or learn more about the work of Faith in Marriage at faithandmarriage.org. See you next time, and God bless.